Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of 6 Degrees of Associations. This is actually going to be our final episode for the year 2021, and I can't believe that we've now been at this for almost a year and a half, Lucas.
I know. It started as just a small project that we thought, hey, it's kind of during COVID, and let's introduce some people from our network to the industry, and let's keep it going.
It's kept going. I love it. We've missed a few weeks, so just apologizing to everybody out there. We've had some illnesses, holidays, all sorts of fun stuff happening, but we're back, and we're going to dive in today with a little bit of an unusual episode in that I am coming back around to interview you, Lucas, because we've been talking recently, and I think there's just a lot of really, first of all, you're an interesting career professional in the association world anyway. And of course, you helm this ship that is now Core Affinity, which we'll get to in just a moment. Right. But also there's been a lot of changes in the business, and I felt like it was time that we should make sure that our audience also keeps in touch with what we're up to and what we're doing internally. And I've been so excited to interview so many interesting people in the industry. But you are also one of those interesting people in the industry. So here we go, Lucas. Are you ready?
We've interviewed a lot of really, really interesting people. Hard to put myself in that crowd, but happy to be here always.
Don't sell yourself short. So what I hinted to there, and oddly enough, we had actually recorded an episode earlier in the fall to kind of talk about this. But as everyone knows, when you're transitioning in a company, when you're maybe either transitioning a brand or you're making new acquisitions, so on and so forth, it can be a really tumultuous time. A lot of things are changing and shifting. And so we ended up shifting this to the end of the year because you weren't just changing a brand name. You weren't just acquiring a company. You were doing all of that at the same time while also still running the core business. Why not? And COVID, so why not? Yeah, I love it. The resilience you show is amazing. So why don't we dive into the first thing? Because Advancea, as most people now hopefully have heard through LinkedIn, the little
our parts of our old logo are still hanging around, but we're getting there.
Is now become Core Affinity. So I'm just curious, can you share with the audience a little bit why now? Why the name? What does it mean for the business and the future?
Well, great question. There's lots of reasons why. We're growing so quickly. We did 2 acquisitions this year, one with the Murray Company, which we announced, which was pretty sizable. That was our largest to date. And we really, took the time during COVID in this last year to really think about, our brand longer term. What do we want to portray to the industry about what we did? We've always talked about, affinity programs are at the core of our business. And for Core Affinity specifically, we just wanted a brand and a name that talked directly to that. But we realized through that process of talking about brand and talking to our clients that the name also speaks to what we allow our clients to do, which is focus on their core mission and values. The affinity program model or managing the suppliers for your members, end up being, as we've talked about in the pod, sort of a secondary or tertiary part of their mission, aside from the advocacy and growing membership and putting out valuable content. So in working with us, we really allow our clients to focus on their core mission. So there's sort of a double take on the Core Affinity, both for us and for them. And we just felt like now was the time because, again, because of the scaling, the growing, we're adding folks, we're building pieces of this, and we took the opportunity and jumped on it.
I like it. Well, I mean, of course, the world is not unused to this now with the big announcement of Meta coming from Facebook. So it shouldn't be too shocking.
They were following us, really.
They were following you, right? And I do, similar to what they did was sort of took a step back at their business and looked at what the broader mission that they had for their company was. And that's why they changed at least the holding company. Everyone keeps thinking that Facebook might have changed, but no, Facebook is still a brand within the Meta group. And so I think that it really spoke a lot when we talked a lot on the branding. As you know, my background is marketing. What I really did like is that when, with the logo transition and moving towards what sits at the core of the business and what sort of 3 key areas do you all focus on and how does that actually make up the core? Because the name Affinity really does bring in maybe a core part of your business, which is affinity management and marketing. Right. But there are a couple of other things that your company offers. And I'm just curious, can you sort of expand upon those sort of 3 intersecting areas of business?
Sure. Yeah. So for Core Affinity specifically, again, we went with this three-prong, this sort of triangle that you'll see in our icon. And that really represents our affinity programs or the supplier relationships that we've built over the years, the technology that we use to implement those programs and sort of manage it through the process with our clients. And we learn a lot from that technology. And then this consulting aspect, we're really focused on managing affinity programs outsourced. And again, as you know, and we've talked about on the pod, we don't just use the technology to manage our portfolio of programs. We really want to engage with a client where they're looking to us to outsource that portfolio and we're managing on behalf. And so there's this consulting management aspect to what we do. And we really, that sort of completes the triangle of a relationship. And ultimately, that's sort of the engagement that we're looking for, because we can create so many cross-selling opportunities, marketing and understanding what's going on with one program, how we can introduce and other suppliers to somebody who's engaged. And that's, as we've talked, that's just an opportunity that's often missed when you're working directly, and you're sort of the hub to a spoke, and it's one-to-one, rather than having everything sort of in the tent together, where we can talk to one member about multiple programs that they're sort of eligible to participate in through their membership.
Because that does include, and you and I have talked about this a lot as you've continued to explain the business model to me, that includes when you're working with an association, for instance, like if they already have affinity partners, the wariness doesn't need to come into place of like, oh, this means I have to, get rid of all my current partners, move to new partners, that this company's going to take over everything. It's more that you're willing to take that outside, fresh look at things to say, hey, there's plenty of partners you might want to keep, but there's also some you might want to sunset. Regardless, we can come in and help manage all of it to keep it in one sort of place and measure, with the marketplace. Because the Perks Marketplace actually, coming out this year, new and improved, really does allow organizations to track the measurability of all of those programs, right?
Yeah, you nailed it. I mean, there's sort of qualitative aspects to the member engagement and the feedback that we get from members. Members want to be heard. That's one of the things, reasons, where you join a group is you want your voice to be heard. And so in the concept of an affinity program portfolio, we also want them to give us that feedback. So they do through the platform. They're in there rating benefits, telling us what they like, telling us what they don't like. And so there's a qualitative aspect to that. And there's also a quantitative aspect where, we're watching and monitoring the engagement through visualization of that data. And, where are they spending their attention? And, where can we do better to increase those numbers and really set metrics that we can score ourselves? And we've talked about scoring engagement in general as a big thing within associations now. And a lot of the AMSs are building those quantitative measures to score the members' engagement, to know where there might be an opportunity to lean in more or focus your efforts and resources. So we apply the same sort of ideas and emphasis to the affinity programs to understand, where's their level of engagements, and we're helping associations even add new pieces to their engagement scoring within their AMS. So it's really cool to be able to work with them and be able to layer in what we do with other things that they're doing within their organization.
Right. I mean, it's also just cool because God knows we've talked to so many people over the last year and a half where technology has really started to come in and transform the way that they're doing business in various areas. And so this is just another example of the way technology is starting to dictate some of that. Yeah. In that line of, looking at the core business, you mentioned consulting, marketing. These are some things that you're doing. And then you also mentioned that you made a pretty large acquisition this year, the Murray Company. So, now could we move on to what was the strategy behind there, and how do you foresee Core Affinity and the Murray Company working together in the future, and how are you organizing that?
Yeah, the Murray Company really came about just through conversations like we have on the pod, right? I mean, we have conversations all the time with our clients, and we sit down and we're just curious, right, to better the relationship and better understand how we can be effective as a partner of theirs. We want to get to know them, what's going on in their organizations, and then in looking at the broader landscape and environment of COVID, a number of our clients had to sort of make some tough layoffs last year. And in coming back, we're struggling to find resources that could be full-time employees. It's a difficult time to attract really good talent, and prices are going up, and benefit packages are expanding, and all this thing. And the Murray Company was really in a unique position as they were a remote work environment, positioning themselves as a fractional resource to the association market that really helped associations with membership sales, sponsorship sales, exhibit sales, and also had this growing department of consulting with regard to membership strategy, board reviews, pricing strategies, all the way down through the line. And so we looked at that as, hey, we want to be a resource to the industry. We need to start expanding our service lines. And this was just an excellent opportunity for us to add more value to, one, clients that we already knew had a need for this, and also potentially to pick up opportunities with our affinity programs within their client base where we could sort of offer something new to them. And we look at that and just go, wow, there's, the landscape is so wide open and we could add so many services. And then we sort of pump the brakes and say, you know what, we really don't want to start adding stuff. Where my mind goes, like 5-10 years down the road, like we could do 100 different things. But we, I know the dump truck of ideas is not always good for, when I unload it on the team in the meetings. But so we pump the brakes, and we only want to add business services and lines that we know we can be experts in the industry at. We want to be the best, right, at everything. And I looked at the Murray Company, and our team looked at the Murray Company and said, they're probably the best in the industry that does this. And JP just built a tremendous team, a tremendous brand, and they're working with the largest of the large national associations in many cases, and just doing fantastic work for them. And the more I got to know the team, like, they're just first class and they do excellent work, and just so excited to be working with them.
Great. So how do you foresee, so Core Affinity will stay its own organization and the Murray Company will stay the Murray Company, or any news there around names or how that will function within the orbit of the larger business?
Yeah, I think we're wrestling through that idea. They offer very different sort of business lines and how they support associations. And so for now, yeah, I think they're sort of going to stand alone in what they do. And obviously, we're referring business between each other and talking about, are there opportunities to sort of cross promote and sell, and how that looks to date. We're still getting in, we're doing strategic planning. We're understanding more of the core competencies, no pun intended, of Murray, of which they have a lot. And again, sort of holding back on all the things that they could do and just getting acclimated to them. But, the sort of the sky's the limit with that org. And we really want to focus on the things that they do really well. And then again, sort of work over the next 12 to 18 months. We have, I can't sneak preview that, but we have a short list of business services that we think they really could be the best in the industry. And they're things that our clients are looking for and asking for already, and they're pushing us, and we're having, in some cases, I hate to say it, we're saying, no, we're not really ready for that yet, but we're going to put that tick on the whiteboard. And when we get enough of those, it's time to really make that a strong emphasis.
Well, I mean, we've had plenty of conversations on this podcast around strategic planning. And so what I like is that I'm hearing a lot of the good advice that we got from several of the individuals we spoke to over the last year around how to strategically plan, that you're employing and implementing in your own strategic planning for 2022 and beyond. And certainly it goes in line with the industry. I mean, look at how many businesses right now are actually starting to separate their organizations based on, I mean, even a Macy's or a Neiman's or a Saks, I think it was most recently Saks, e-commerce is separate from retail, in-store retail. And so I think it makes perfect sense that you're saying, let's hold off, because these are two different lines of business and there's a lot of good cross promotion and cross work that can happen, but let's wait and see and not rush to the table to say, let's just merge everything together. So we're certainly excited. Yeah,
focus is really good. I recently heard sort of a metaphor analogy from a really brilliant speaker, and I may have even talked about this on the pod. And it was in referencing a river, right? So when the river banks are nice and wide and the river's going at its pace, and what happens if you sort of narrow the banks and focus, is you just get this super high velocity of growth and attention. And that's sort of where we want to be. And right now they did have a narrow, Murray Company has a narrow focus, and it's moving quickly. So we have the opposite. We don't want to widen the banks and sort of slow the progress and focus of that group. And so we're just gonna, we're gonna inch them by inch by inch.
I like it. I'm always a fan of everyone, thinking that way through and making sure that these are the right things that the market's calling for. And honestly, there's still so much up in the air in our economy, and the pandemic is still a pandemic, so I think it just makes perfect sense. And hopefully that's some business, foresight that you can be imparting upon our listening audience here today, that taking it slow is not taking, it down. It's just saying, let's make sure that we're doing the right things to create the growth that we need.
Being strategic. I mean, I've certainly have the scars of chasing shiny objects or, going too wide and flat. in my past. And so, we've looked to learn from that and others within the organization that sort of help guide. I mean, those strategic planning meetings, you get a lot of brains and ears at the table, and really good things happen.
That's awesome. So just out of curiosity, then, some of those meetings are just in your planning and winding down 2021 and looking at 2022. What are some of the things that you're looking at in the industry that you're saying, this might shift, or we're preparing for these types of things to occur? Any insights that you're kind of leading your decisions based on?
Yeah, we're still heavily focused on technology, and actually in both orgs. We've already made some investments in Murray Company on technology, and just sort of raised the enterprise editions of things that we already had. We've implemented some new things. We're looking at new technology partners to sort of better accomplish what we do. There's so much that can be done with automation. There's so much that can be done with data analytics and getting into the AI components that really allows the employees on staff to flourish in what they do, which is the building relationships, having conversations with people that aren't just going to click something on the web and suddenly join or suddenly go to a show. That sort of omni-channel approach sort of expands and explodes when you can automate all of the touch points that can be automated, and you don't want to over automate. I recognize that's a thing too, and it can get sort of dry or stale or what have you. And then on the Core Affinity side, you were making a pretty dramatic increase in that marketplace technology moving into 2022. That development project is just getting kicked off, and it's probably 120 day. I'm pushing for 90, of course, but 120, we don't want to rush to failure.
Right.
But we're really looking forward to the sort of the features and products and benefits. And we've listened to our clients, and we've watched members engage with the platform, and coupled that with what our association clients have asked us to do. And we sort of share with them the list often, and they go, wow, it would be really cool. I see these things on your roadmap. If we could do this, that would help us in other areas. And so we're trying to respond there. And that's a strong focus going to 2022, and being able to sort of share with the association world what that platform will be able to do in early 2022. And then, let's just continue to go down the 3 to 5 year roadmap that's been laid out internally on what we believe that would, help create in terms of efficiencies for our clients.
Awesome. Now, one of the things that I recognize that you've been able to do over the last, let's say, quarter or so, is to get out there more often. You've been traveling a little bit more. You've been getting into a few more conferences. What's your, I have not. So tell me, let me live vicariously.
Come on, let's get out there.
I know, right? What's it been like? And do you foresee, we've got Omicron sneaking in now. Now people are making some projections that might pull things back. How has it been, A? And B, do you see you getting to continue to do that in the first quarter? And are you liking it? Are you appreciating getting back in person, or are you still seeing a big hybrid world?
You know what? I'm not liking it. I'm loving it. It feels so good. And I'm having the same conversations that it's sort of like you don't know what you've lost till it's gone thing. And when you get back in person, and sitting knee to knee with our association clients at their events, and, sort of those makeshift, meeting rooms in the middle, it's for me, it's such a relief to get back to that. Some of the exhibitors, you can see, are somewhat disappointed in sort of the initial traffic. I think there's an expectation that we're just going to jump back into,
Right.
full attendance, full activity, full engagement. And I think we need to understand this is going to be another 12 to 18 months. I think my prediction until we get back to, even 75, 80% of the
Sure.
full engagement that we saw before. And I was just out in San Francisco, of course, and there's, people that sort of backed out of that event at the last minute because
Right.
Omicron hit the shores over there. But again, even with that sort of scaled down engagement, it just felt so good to get back. And that's the things I was hearing as well. It was, wow, this is such a relief. I didn't know, and I'm ready to do more. And we already have several events scheduled. I mean, I'm out again first, second week of January, and then February, March. Like we're moving and getting out there. And then locally here in DC area, more meetings, more lunches. I'm glad to be back to, as we prospect, people for both organizations, to be able to go have lunch with them, go grab coffee. I mean, and they'll say the same thing. Hey, I just had an interview yesterday with somebody for a position at Core. And he goes, this is the first in-person meeting I've had, or,
Wow.
In probably 3 months. And they were, interviewing, all the interviews had been Zoom. And he goes, I really, really appreciate that we can do this. And so
Yeah.
I think it's there. You just, get out, you'll feel it.
Well, I think we're close to 30 episodes here. So I feel like there's at least 30 individuals that we could all invite, quarter one, maybe, to get me out of the house now. We can finally meet all of these lovely people in person.
Yeah,
because we've
that's
had
an
such
idea. We could do a live meetup.
a live meetup for all of our former podcast guests. Yeah, that would
Yeah.
be pretty awesome, especially considering the 6 degrees. It's so interesting how many different people would be like, oh, and we'll find actually it's not 6 degrees, it's 2 degrees. And, we need to change the name of the show or something, but
No.
it would be pretty cool.
We're making it 2 degrees. That's part of the emphasis. It's going from
Exactly.
6 to 2 because of the pod. No, we're going to make
because of the pod. Yeah.
It's going to take us a few more episodes, but we'll get there.
Yeah, right. It's just so cool. I mean, if we think about it, we've been doing this for, I guess it's 15, 16 months, which about 2 a month. It's a lot of people we've been able to meet, but all on Zoom. And so it's just, it's a crazy situation. And the funny thing that most people might not know here is what's really hilarious is that Lucas is solidly like 6 foot. What are you, 4, 6'5"?
Yeah, 3, 4.
And I'm 5'2".
Yeah.
And so I've been in a situation recently where I was finally meeting someone in person. I've been on Zoom and they're like, wow, you're really small. And I was like, what did I look like on screen? And I'm sure you're getting the same thing. You're like, wow, you're really tall. So it's just little things like that help us remember like, oh yes, we're not just boxes of faces on screen. So I'm excited.
I had that conversation with my wife and say, hey, I finally met so-and-so that we've been talking with on Zoom forever. And she always asks, were they the height that you expected? It is kind of funny.
I know. It's always like such a strange thing. It's like, how tall did you think I would be? Or, how short did you think I would be? So it's kind of interesting that way. Well, I will go ahead and get us wrapped up because I'm always coming out here with all of our other guests. So I may as well, we could talk forever. But let's wrap this up, and I'm going to put you on the spot like I put every other guest on the spot.
Oh, okay, let's do it.
And have you tell us, who would you have us talk to over the next couple of months that you think would be really interesting on the show and that our audience could benefit hearing from?
I could name half a dozen too. I'm going to stick to the rules because I think the original rules and intent was 1, even though we've gotten some fantastic guests that have thrown 2, 3, and we're looking forward to getting to those. So I believe she was, I may be mistaken, don't quote me. I think she was employee 1 at the Murray Company, Elizabeth Johnson. She's been in the industry 10 plus years. She's worked with dozens of national associations, both in from a sales perspective, from an advisory perspective. She's got just a tremendous handle on the industry, and she sees in working with so many different associations in her role and going into next year, she has a really good grasp and understanding on the needs that are out there. And I think it would be great to pick her brain and sort of say, hey, what are some things that you're seeing out there? And, give us sort of a future look into what do you think's coming based on what you're hearing. So
that's great.
Elizabeth
Johnson, I love it. We can meet more people in the family and see how that's going to expand our universe even more. So let's do it. All right, Elizabeth, we're coming for you. Well, to you, Lucas, and to everybody else that's listening to this, I just want to wish everybody a very happy holiday season. Be safe, be healthy, be peaceful and comfortable. And we can't wait to see everyone in the new year, 2022, if you can believe it. I feel like we've, like, even though we've been doing this for, again, 16, 17 months, it feels, I keep having to remind myself that this was 2021, that COVID hit in 2020. Are you finding that where you're thinking like 2019 was centuries ago?
Sometimes I think it was last year. Like I lost a year. I said, do you remember that happened last year? And they were like, no, that was 2019. I'm like,
yeah. Oh,
wow,
yeah.
That was 2 years ago.
Yeah, 2 years ago. I know my kids, as everyone knows, we moved to Atlanta in March, and my kids were like, we've been here for like a year already. I'm like, we've been here for 8 months. Like we've not been here a full year. We moved in this calendar year. So 2022, here we come. Please, we'll all be praying for some stability in all aspects of the world, and then some fruitfulness and growth for both you and all of our listening audience. So thank you again for joining me.
My pleasure. And I also want to take the opportunity to thank you. I don't think most people understand like how much you've helped with not only the pod, but the brand, like your background in experiential marketing and marketing in general and brand. And you've been a little bit behind the scenes in that, but you've had just a tremendous impact on our growth and our brand and the emphasis that we've been able to put and sharing our story with the world, the association world, and bringing in all those members. So thank you, Erin. I really, really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure. So, all right. Well, we'll see you all in 2022. Take care.